Here's a little nugget that I've been thinking about a lot recently, and I think it's been helping me a lot with behavioral change and doing what I want and staying motivated and I think it's going to be a long-term play that's going to compound over a long time. And the idea came to me serendipitously when I was at the end of neuroscience 1. We were studying a chapter on attention as the final chapter in the book, and I was also at the same time listening to an audiobook called Influence by Robert Cialdini. And one idea from the neuroscience, one idea from the Influence book, they came together right at the perfect time, and something clicked. So before I get into that, let me take you back to when I was 14 years old. I saw a Tai Lopez ad. Actually, I think I was 12. Doesn't make any difference though. A long time ago, a decade ago now, I saw an ad, a now famous viral YouTube ad where Tai Lopez is like, "I'm here in my garage, got a new Lamborghini. But you know what I like more than materialistic things? Knowledge. Just put in another 7 bookshelves here in the garage." And that ad resonated with me instantly, and I was hooked right away. I'm like, whatever this guy has to say, like, I'm gonna listen. And he was selling courses way back in the day. And that was one of the first like sales person or people or sales ads I saw on the internet. And I didn't know what it was at the time, but I was like, whatever this guy's selling, like, I want to buy it. At the time, I couldn't afford to buy his courses, but what he said in one of his major messages was read books, read books, read books, read knowledge, learn. And that resonated with me, and I said, okay, I can do that. I have books, I can read books. And so I started reading books. And now, 10 years later, I've got an apartment full of books. And that 100% came from that sales video, no doubt. No doubt. That's the crazy thing. And I don't know if I've ever told anyone that, but that's the truth. So he told me to start reading books, and I started reading books. And I think 10 years ago, this is the first book I picked up, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I think this might have been my dad's, maybe not. Maybe I could have scrounged up the $8 to buy it. Actually, in fact, that wasn't the first book I read. The first book I read was given to me when I think I was in 7th grade. Here it is. The Investment Guide for Teens, because I got into stocks. When I was like 12, and that's probably why YouTube dished me up a Tai Lopez ad. He's like, this person's interested in money and internet money and stuff like that and business, and so they dished me up that. That was the book I read. Around that time, I went to Berkshire Hathaway's annual meeting. I read this lawn boy book, a little tale of a guy doing a lawn care business. But in this first book, somewhere in here, there's like, it's stuff you could write out. I guess I didn't fill it all out, but it was like, you need so little money with the power of compound interest, which I first learned in this book, Compound Interest. You need so little that just a little bit of allowance money and a little bit of money from a part-time job can go a long way over your whole life. And I was just blown away by the concept of compound interest. I couldn't believe it. And I just saw in here that I had an entry from 2017. So I probably wasn't 12. I probably was 13 or 14. But I loved this book, and I loved compound interest, and that shaped my life a lot. And it evolved from there. A lot more business books, and then I expanded into science, and then I did a lot of other stuff. But coming full circle, let me pull this back to where I was. Okay. So I started reading all these books, right? And I would sit down and I'd lock in and I'd read. Every book on this shelf and every book up to here, except for these are journals. So almost 2 shelves worth full of books. I read every word in every book from cover to cover. I would literally read everything, including the sleeve, of course. I'd read, yeah, let's find something. This to share the ridiculousness, like this. Like the publishing information I would read. The publishing information I would read. Because I just thought if I read a book fully, completely, then I'll lock it in. And I'll learn everything there is to learn. And that set me off on a long journey of learning how to learn. I don't know if I have any books over here that encapsulate that, but that was my method. That was my intuitive go. I said, okay, I'm gonna be the best reader. I'm gonna read every word, and I'm gonna sub-vocalize every word from cover to cover. And I did, and it took a long time. And I would always be like, audiobooks? No, I'm not gonna read audiobooks, or I'm not gonna listen to audiobooks because audiobooks I can't put my full attention on, and distraction, that means I'm not going to learn, and so it's a waste of time. And it was a big thing back then was I'd get false information. I'll learn things wrong. I'm so happy I got relieved of that belief from a course I took on learning. But anyway, let's bring it back to the little nugget that I've now been implementing. Basically, what you pay attention to, where you place your attention, which we've got basically one stream of attention. The idea of multitasking is likely a fallacy, and instead of diverting your stream of attention, you're just switching back and forth really quickly, potentially in milliseconds. So really quickly, you can't perceive it. So you think you're focusing on 2 things at once, but you only have one stream. And where you point that stream, that flashlight of attention, that's what you think, or that's what you deem subconsciously as important. Because otherwise, why would you be paying attention to it? You only pay attention to things that are important. So anything you pay attention to, you think is important. Maybe you don't think so consciously, or that's not important, but biologically, in the definition of importance, it is extremely high. Daniel Kahneman, somewhere back there, his book is Thinking Fast and Slow. There it is up there. Behavioral scientists, top behavioral scientists, essentially said, someone asked him, what's the most important lesson or something you can give, or piece of advice or thing you've learned over your career? And he basically said in one line, nothing is as important as you think it is when you're paying attention to it. So anything we pay attention to, we deem as basically the most important thing in your life right now. And this boils status down simply as well. What defines status? What defines a high status individual? They get a lot of attention from people. People think they're important, and maybe they don't say, I think this person is important, but it's understood subconsciously that, lots of people are paying attention to this person. This person must be important. So yeah, what you pay attention to is what you deem biologically, by definition, to be extremely important. And so that takes reading and books and learning to a different level. So now when you're sitting there reading a book, not and maybe it's not only about the information you get and the facts you get, you know, or the things that change your behavior. You learn this little technique, you learn this thing in this book, you learn this new piece of knowledge. Yes, that's what I thought. That was the only thing I thought there was. But now I think, who knows? Maybe it's more important just the act of doing it, the act of putting your attention to something, and you're saying, oh, this thing is important. And whatever subject you study, if you're putting your attention on that subject, well, now your body is like, and your brain's like, okay, this thing is important. Anytime we come into contact with information or potential networks or people or opportunities to progress and learn more and develop my knowledge and skills in this subject in the future, make sure to remember that, make sure to be motivated by those opportunities, and make sure to take action on those opportunities, because we've spent hundreds, thousands, 10,000 hours pointing our flashlight of attention at this subject or this topic or whatever it may be, this skill. So anytime we get an opportunity to better ourselves and learn new information about this subject in the future, make sure to take that opportunity, and make sure when you get that information in your brain, highlight that over and over again, and we're going to remember that stuff. So is there more value to listening to audiobooks than just the raw facts and the technical things you learn that you maybe won't be able to implement? I think 100%. I think just the act of having something that you value, that you want to be better at, that you want to develop in your ears, and you're paying attention to it when you're doing everything, when you're driving, when you're eating, when you're walking, when you're doing anything where you're not working and using your attention. Anytime you're doing things that are low maintenance, they don't require a lot of attention, you're signaling to your body, this thing is important. This thing is important. And so that's what I've been doing. I've listened to, I don't know how many books in the past couple weeks, 10 plus audiobooks and a couple podcasts. I've listened to, you don't realize how many hours a day you have that your just mind is wandering or doing whatever else. And I don't know if that's I'm not saying it's a good or a bad thing. I think there's benefits to both, relaxing, maybe listening to music, maybe just doing nothing, just thinking, letting your mind wander. But if you want to achieve high things, my idea is you put your attention, it's like a meditation. You keep returning your attention, you keep returning your attention, you keep returning your attention to this thing over and over again. And yeah, I pick up way more than I thought I ever would. I'm starting to see the landscape of the digital entrepreneur influencer area. I see how these people are connected in this niche. I see how the funnels and now I'm forgetting, or I guess I've never used the word, but you could call it a funnel, the flow through of a business. How does a business work? Well, you got the top of funnel, people that are just become aware of your business or your product or whatever you're selling, and then you funnel them all the way down from aware to have taken action and shown interest to, being targeted by ads or being sold or being relationships being developed with salespeople to sold. And that's half of a business. And then the other half is they're through the funnel, and now they're in your business, and now you fulfill on what you've sold, and you try to develop goodwill and deliver good service, so then you can keep earning more from these already acquired customers. But a customer acquisition is an enormous part of every business, and that's what a lot of this marketing, sales, webinar, info products, there are sales systems, sales coaching, sales products, and marketing products, enormous on the internet now because of things we have like social media, but they're all about client acquisition, and it's pretty cool. There's a guy on the internet named Charlie Morgan. He literally has a huge info product business about client acquisition, and I didn't understand it until recently, until I've gotten a bigger picture. I've listened to all these books that I've been listening to that have been recommended by Alex Hormozy. he's got 13 books. I said, I'll start there, and maybe that's all I'll need. Today I started, I think it's called Recurring Revenue, and I'm forgetting the author. This one's a little out there for me. It's a guy that worked in Salesforce.com, developed their sales system. But it just gives me these little nuggets that I can place into the bigger picture. And all this time, I'm putting my attention on, I'm signaling my body what's important. I want to be the best at this. I want to do this really good. And yeah, that's to tie it all up. I did not expect to talk for 15 minutes. I expected this to be a 2-minute video, but where you place your attention on, you are choosing what to tell yourself, subconsciously, your body, your brain, what is important. And you have control over where you put that attention. And for me, wanting to become the best at what I do, become very successful, become an outlier, well, I keep putting my attention to marketing, to sales, to internet entrepreneurs, to business, entrepreneurship. And yeah, that's what I've been doing. And we'll see where it goes, but that's about it. I'll talk to you guys later.